everything that you find in a glaze recipe falls in these 4 groups. Okay. In a glaze, you will find a feldspar. Again, it may have a brand name. It may be G200. It may be Custer. It may be Kona F4. It may be NC4 or Minspar, or something like something called nepheline cyanide. We'll talk more about these. Don't worry, we won't skip past them. But you'll find all these different brand names or types, and they all represent something different. And knowing what is in those materials is of the greatest importance, because that dictates how your glaze is going to perform. But for the most part, generically, you will find a feldspar in a glaze. It is almost impossible to find a glaze without a feldspar, especially at cone 10. When we get into lower temperatures, things get a little wonky. We'll talk about that. But you'll find a feldspar. The second thing that you will find is clay. Clay is almost in every glaze. Because clay, as we talked about, it's got this great property that it sticks together. It also has an opposite property in that it's non-Newtonian. It means it doesn't necessarily respond to the laws of physics. And we use that to our advantage, because if we put clay, about 10% clay, in a glaze mixture, in a glaze suspension, it keeps all of the materials floating, because feldspar is just a rock. Now, on a great scale, if I went over to a pond and I took a rock and dropped it in, it would drop to the bottom. Now, feldspar is very fine. It's a fine mesh. It's still just a rock. Okay? And that rock will sink to the bottom of my glaze bucket when I mix it in water. Clay is great. It's non-Newtonian, and because it's got these particles, it just keeps all of the different materials bouncing off of each other in the glaze suspension, and it keeps everything floating. So clay is a rather important constituent physically in the glaze. It also is a source of alumina. We'll get to that. The next thing you'll find is flint. Most glazes will have flint. Again, this is pure silica, and we'll talk about how and why, but almost all glazes will have flint. Whether it says flint or quartz or silica, it's all the same thing. Okay. Then the last thing you'll find is the carbonate. Okay, this alkali earth. They're really, really important. Like I said, they're responsible for the quality of matte glazes and the appearance of color. It's all about the carbonate. And on top of that, they also make our glazes exceptionally durable. Okay, they're really, really important materials, and we'll talk about that. Okay, so